Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video, I'm here to talk to you about my latest knife design. This here is the Inception. Now if you're not familiar with Shade of Indonesia, take a minute, do a little bit of research. You'll see there are a number of up-and-coming knife designers leveraging the phenomenal craftsmanship of Shade of Indonesia, and that's exactly what we have here today with the Inception. So the Inception for me is really the next iteration in my design elements, thinking about the survival wilderness fixed blade. 6-inch general size class, overbuilt, just enough to make this sturdy, durable, and hit hard, but at the same time light enough that it feels nimble in the hands, is a good and wieldy knife, and just can perform all of those basic camp tasks all the way through wood processing, splitting, all your fire prep, and everything you need to get into a survival situation. So what we're going to do when we come back, I'm going to show you this Inception in detail. I'm going to roll in a whole bunch of field use footage so I can talk to you about this. Now keep in mind, this is currently a prototype. I've made a number of design changes, not major, but enough to fine-tune and refine this design as I go into the production run. At this point, I am going into the production run, so if you like this and you're looking to get your hands on one of these Inceptions, well, you may want to reach out. And if you like what you see here today, do me a favor, reach out to outerlimitless@gmail.com and I can give you all the details. And so when we get back, we're going to roll into that field use footage, then we're going to come back to the studio so I can show you this in greater detail. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Shade for their phenomenal craftsmanship. Nicely done. And so now, as we get into some good hard field use with the Inception, keep in mind this is currently at the prototype stage, so it's my job to figure out what works about this, what doesn't work about this, and anything that we may need to tweak going into the production run. So here, the very first use, well, I need to clear myself a little bit of a space to get to work. The first thing for me is a survival knife, a general wilderness knife, and something in the 6-inch blade size class has to be able to do the bulk of tasks fairly easy. It's going to be a little bit of a jack of all trades, but it has to do the work effectively. So getting into just a little bit of clearing, no problem. This has a nice quality refined edge. It is a convex grind all the way down to the edge, and that makes this a good stout knife, but also a phenomenal slicer. So what you're going to see here is what I typically do with my survival knives. I'm an outdoor fixed blade type of guy. I love my fixed blade knives to be able to perform general firecraft tasks. That's absolutely going to be the case here with the Shade of Indonesia Inception. So here you can see doing some of the batoning tasks. Now, typically, a flat grind is going to bind, which is why my original design, it was a flat grind design, but we went with a saber because the shoulder on the saber definitely gives it the ability to actually split the wood without binding up. That's a big deal. And so as I work to process down and through the wood, you'll see that the Inception does a nice job translating the crack from the top of the log all the way to the bottom, and even with some gnarly knots and twists in the grain. That is a big deal for me. I really don't want a knife that's going to get completely bound up and stuck in a log. That can be very problematic if you're actually out in a survival situation. It's not safe. It can cause damage to your equipment, and it's certainly not getting the work done. So having a knife that actually translates the crack from the top of the wood all the way to the bottom helps reduce the overall friction, but also helps to reduce the potential that you get your tool stuck in the wood. And you can see log after log after log, this Inception doing a wonderful job with the splitting tasks. So again, translating that crack from the top of the piece all the way to the bottom, no problem. It is a very effective splitting tool. Now moving forward even furthermore, I really love to do stabbing tasks with my survival knives for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, testing this for the durability, for the heat treat, for the overall capability of the knife to take some punishment. Stabbing tasks will absolutely prove that out. Now, keep in mind, the Inception is a hand-forged knife. This does have some machining process, but it starts with a hand-forged process, and the heat treat on this is so phenomenally well done. 5160 is a spring steel. That's a knife that, in my opinion, you really want to be able to perform under stress. So having the spring steel is definitely going to come into play. And 5160 is a fantastic option. So here, stabbing down through the wood time and time again, really pounding down, this is going to test the overall quality of the steel and the heat treat. Now, furthermore, the geometry, the overall ergonomics, and the quality of the guard. Can I do this work safely? So as I pound down through the wood and I split it, I really feel secure. I have a nice, large, oversized guard capable of protecting my hand during these stabbing tasks. And as you see, I mean, really pounding down through the wood and giving this a good overall stressful test. It's not just stressful for the knife, it's stressful for me, because the last thing I want to do is run my hand down an exceptionally sharp convex edge on a refined 5160 high carbon steel knife. But you can see no worries at all, working confidently. The Inception performing extremely well. I am super happy with this. And the fact that it has the unsharpened swedge definitely aids in its ability to perform these splitting tasks with ease. So far, very, very good. No deformation whatsoever. This knife is still in perfect condition. Now, what about chopping and limbing? Again, this needs to be able to do some of those tasks. I will often use my survival knives to prepare a campsite. You need the ability to do basic limbing. You need the ability to process wood smaller and smaller so you can even split it in the first place. And you'll see a number of different sizes of branches here, and the Inception doing a wonderful job. No fear the knife would slide out of my hands. But a knife is only a knife because of its ability to cut. What about these carving tasks? So now you can see as I try to get some nice shavings off of this piece of wood. Well, again, shade of Indonesia really caught my attention when I realized how incredibly nice their edge geometry and the refined edge they get. These knives carve so phenomenally well. Not just the Inception, but shade knives in general. They do a wonderful job with the edge geometry, a wonderful job with the heat treatment, and their overall grind lines are just perfect. So here you can see I am using a couple of different grips. Now, the Inception was designed to be able to take advantage of the entire full hammer grip, but also choke up on the finger choil. Now, unfortunately, I am finding a few things, and this is part of the prototype testing process. You'll notice that I am developing a hot spot. The way the jimping and the finger choil meet my hands leaves a couple of hot spots. And because of my testing, I am able to work this all out in the production run. And that is why testing a prototype is critical. So here, working my way through this, I will be widening out my finger choil, I will be softening the jimping, and I will be making sure that on the guard, it's not digging into my fingers. This is a great opportunity to make those refinements and take this knife from what's really, really good to almost perfect. And as I get on the wood here, just the carving capability, the overall precision, my control is phenomenally good. So I'm very happy with this. And this is pretty stubborn wood. I am using a couple of different types of wood for this testing. You'll see I am using some oak, and in this particular case, a really gnarly and twisted maple. I am trying to test all my knives on good, durable hardwoods, so I really get a feel for the overall quality of the knife, the quality of the steel, the capabilities, but the edge geometry. Every single type of wood is going to carve a little bit different, and I found that this maple is typically some of the most difficult to work with. So here, getting a nice controlled carving action, The awesome thing about the Inception, I had the ability to find the edge geometry immediately. But again, some of these little hot spots are getting me a second time. So as I'm getting through this carving, I am definitely learning a ton about what to do to make these corrections. And I can tell you I've already reached out to Shade, and we are making these little refinements to the design to make sure that this knife comes out in the production run without any of these little hot spots. But that's the luxury, again, of being able to test finding these things out in a controlled environment so I can make the revisions, make the refinements. But overall, I am thrilled with the quality of the edge. Look how easy this is to get nice, controlled carving action, very simple, super fine curls, and a really refined point on this steak. Now, as I try to get even finer curls, this again, I'm trying to get the dainty, fine, refined curls. It's one thing to hog out the wood, it's another to get those fine little feather sticks. So here you can see I'm trying to kind of carve out this feather here, get some nice refined curls. This is usually instrumental in my ability to start a fire. Remember what I said, this is a survival wilderness blade. This has to perform for the field craft. It has to perform for the fire prep. And so getting my fire prepared, this is critical. So everything from the heavier duty tasks, the chopping, the limbing, and the splitting, all the way down through carving, but now getting the feathers, this is a critical part of testing my knife. And the edge geometry and the overall quality of the edge from Shade of Indonesia, again, second to none. I instantaneously could find the edge geometry. I'm capable of taking nice, fine, and refined curls, and this is going to be an instrumental part in my ability to successfully start a fire in most conditions, and especially when it's wet. And as you can see, continuing to test the edge, it is a good idea to test a knife at length, so everything from the harder use all the way through the finer curls. And so I did do a whole bunch of testing far beyond what you even see here on screen. And again, just playing with different grips, playing with the steel, trying to make sure that it was able to hold an edge and perform all these tasks easily on a number of different pieces of wood, on a number of different types of wood. Again, the Inception performing extremely well. So from a practical standpoint, at this point, I can say I'm very happy with the design. This is coming together nicely, and everything that I thought in my mind as I designed this knife, it's absolutely coming to prove itself in the field use. So again, the Inception here doing exactly what I need to prepare all this wood for a fire, and that is a very good deal. Now, I wondered about my ability to get some fuzz. This does not have a sharpened spine on the prototype. And again, for me, the ability to use this knife as not just a general wilderness knife, but a survival knife really does rely on my ability to process every type of wood, most of the fire prep tasks, and especially getting some really fine little tinder to start my fire. And the fuzz that comes from scraping tasks is absolutely instrumental. So you'll notice that as I test this out, there's nothing in the way of a sharpened spine. That is something that we do need to refine in the final production version. What about fat wood? Fat wood is very interesting because every knife performs differently. Some knives really struggle with fat wood. Every grind is going to perform a little bit different. And in this case, I was blown away, absolutely blown away at the capability of the Inception to get incredibly fine little slices on this fat wood. As you take a look here, you'll see that this is gliding through the fat wood effortlessly and really making some ridiculous, nice, thin, paper thin slices on this fat wood. This is going to really save me. And look at how candied and resinous this is, to the point where it's literally almost dripping. And some of these curls, although you can't really see it, are almost thin enough that you can see through them. So again, the Inception just performing so well on the fat wood. I am thrilled. Now, taking some larger chunks here, trying not to necessarily get into really sort of the slices, but more chunks. Again, performing very, very well. You can see here it is capable of getting some nice chunks off, turning it into a little bit of curls, which is awesome. This is really testing the edge of the knife wonderfully. And as I have said the entire time, this Inception performing phenomenally well. You'll see I am using multiple different grips, at some points with my thumb over the top, at some points with the sort of hammer grip on the main handle, and then other times choking up, getting actually onto the finger choil. Now, unfortunately, as I mentioned, there is no way to get fuzz at this time on the prototype. And again, the final production run definitely will. I wanted to test all the different sections of the blade to see if there was an effective means to do this. I'm actually using the jimping here to get a little bit of fuzz. Now that is another thing, an indication of how sharp the jimping is. To me, the jimping needs to be softened. That is something that I will be working on with Shade for the final production run. But again, the edge geometry just for splitting, ever so perfect. Getting some nice pieces here. You can see I do like to process down my fat wood and get tiny little sticks. Again, this is really instrumental in your ability to start a fire in pretty much every condition, and it worked very well for splitting. And then again, those stabbing tasks, this is critical to me. Having a knife that can do the stabbing tasks and you're not worried about tip damage, that's critical. And this just pops this fat wood with ease. Because of the unsharpened swedge, you get a nice tip penetration, but it's thick enough, quick enough, that it does a great job with the splitting. And I am really happy with the performance, basically in every task so far. But this is just such a subtle nuance, the ability to do this work easily, to do it controlled, to trust it, to not be in any real danger of cutting yourself because you trust the knife, because it works effectively. I am extremely happy with this design. And so again, everything about the Inception working according to plan, very, very nicely done. I am extremely happy not only with the design, but the quality of the craftsmanship and manufacturing from Shade. So far, very good in the testing. Now, because I was unable to get any shavings, you'll notice I had to actually improvise using the edge of the blade to get some real fine little pieces of fat wood so I could try to start my fire. Now, by the end of this, you're going to see this is the process where you really need to get to that super fine tinder, and unfortunately, I was not able to do it very effectively. But I did use the blade for this test, and when you use the edge in this manner, it can really roll over, it can dull, it could potentially even chip, but you could really have a problem with edge retention with inferior heat treatment. But in this particular case, really no problem at all. Shade doing a phenomenal job with the heat treat, and the fact that it is a convex edge means it's a little more durable. Now I'm really struggling to find the way to get a spark off of this knife. I can try with the jimping, but it's not the most effective. It's going to wreck my ferro rod, and I'm just bashing down really ineffectively down onto the working surface. You can see I did get some sparks, but it doesn't do what I need it to do. I tested all kinds of different sections of the knife in order to do this, and nothing was really effective. Could I use the actual blade itself? Of course I can, but I really don't like doing that to my knives, so, well, I bowed out, and at this point just went with a lighter. Not the best, but that's what I did in order to get my fire processed. So all in all, as I mentioned, some definite refinements that need to be made to the design, but I am pretty happy with the fire making capabilities overall. And so there you have it, a look at the field use testing of this Inception. Again, just a fantastic and stellar performer. On the average, I am extremely happy with how this performed. Now, you also heard me say I do think there are some fundamental little changes that need to be done going into the production run. And it's nitpicky. I love when something is so close to perfect that it just takes a little bit of nitpicking to nail it and really get it from what, in my opinion, was 85 or 90% of the way there and just make it that 100% home run. So again, the Inception performing extremely well. Now let's go through the features so that you can see this again in great detail. And so the overall length of the Inception from the tip to the back end of the pommel end, 12 1/8 inches. The overall blade length is roughly 6 5/8 inches with a 6 1/2 inch cutting edge. This does have roughly a 1-inch finger choil. This overall handle grip in the grip area, so the grip area being 4 inches. The blade stock thickness is 5 millimeters, or in other words, 3/16 of an inch. Again, the Inception made of 5160, and this knife weighs in at 12 ounces even. So a perfect size, perfect shape, and the geometry that just lends itself to general field use, camp tasks, and survival tasks. This, in my opinion, is about the perfect mid-size, mid-weight survival knife and design. That's exactly what I was going for. Now, there are some great benefits to this and things that I would like to point out. First and foremost, the blade depth, just about perfect for this mid-weight survival class. It is about 1 5/8 inches from the top of the spine down to that cutting edge. Now you'll notice that this is saber ground. My original conceptual design was for a full flat grind, but if you've been watching my channel, you realize I do love saber grinds, and especially for the survival blade size class. A knife that can do the hard use and the splitting really does benefit from having a high saber grind, and that's exactly what you get going into a full convex edge. So this is pretty much like a flat grind going into a full convex edge. Again, as I mentioned, one of the sliciest, just most refined edges you could possibly get coming from Shade of Indonesia. The edge on this and the carving capability is phenomenal. But the other thing that you get with the convex edge, a little bit more meat behind the edge, which is going to make it stout enough that you're not going to chunk an edge, you're not going to damage it, it's not going to chip too easily, it shouldn't roll, and that's going to make a perfect edge, again, for that survival blade size class. Now again, being 5160 spring steel, it's going to have the flexibility that you need and the toughness to pound down through wood, flex around, yet come back to perfectly true. That is definitely one of the benefits that you get. And something else worth mentioning, again, the fact that this is hand forged, just a beautiful design. You'll notice on the flats, it still has the scale. So that forged scale there, just beautiful. Some of the hammer marks, phenomenal, but the grind work is just pristine. And 5160 will patina, it will tarnish. You definitely need to take care of it. You'll see I have a little bit of patina on here from cutting my food and, the different food prep tasks that I've done with this. But that's okay. I actually like that. Not a big deal. It just adds character to the knife while you use it. Across the top, the jimping, a little bit aggressive, but at the same time provides a nice lockup. Now this design is a subtle ramp, and one of the changes that I need, for example, the fact that right now the jimping just drops off makes it sharp in the hands and definitely left some hot spots. And for me, I really would love to design the hot spots out of it. So I have addressed this going into the production run. So at this point, it will ramp back down and soften out that transition. Now, another design element worth noting, I did not have any ability to strike a ferro rod or scrape at wood or provide any sort of tinder source from the spine of this knife. So this will be sharpened, at least to a certain point. I do intend on being able to bear on the spine without tearing up my thumb. So the sharpening should be sort of midway through the spine of the knife. And then again, the ability to push on the unsharpened swedge. Kind of really don't want that terribly sharpened, but maybe just enough that if you need to, you can use it to strike your ferro rod. So overall, we should see a sharpened spine on the final production run. The next thing, the finger choil for that forward control. I love on my survival knives just to have that forward control for a little more detailed work. And the fact that this has the unsharpened swedge allows you to get further up and do some controlled push cuts. Now, one thing that I do need to mention, the choil on this version is undersized for my liking. I typically design to at least 1 inch maybe a little bit more to buy a little bit of space, and this is kind of tight for my liking. Kind of gets me a little bit close up here on the blade and also gets my grind a little bit into the plunge line, which I'd like to avoid. So again, that's something that's being corrected on the production run, and in that area also the guard. So a nice pronounced guard, as you can see here, good positive lockup, no way to slip off the blade. But as I'm gripping the knife, I did find that because this was made square, it did leave, again, a hot spot on my finger and really wore into my finger after extended use. So again, something else that's being addressed for the production run. It's the nice thing about going through the prototype testing stage that allows me, as a hard use knife user and really somebody who likes to get the design about ergonomically perfect, I can make these adjustments, and that's exactly what we're doing with Shade of Indonesia. Now the handle, perfectly ergonomic in every way, nicely rounded and contoured flush to the tang. The craftsmanship, phenomenal on these knives. You'll see here, this is a black and tan combination with copper pins, and then the maker's mark in the middle. Up over the top, really subtle, but there are some subtle green liners in there. Very, very subtle, but it is there. Now, my production run, I do anticipate having a number of different colors available. I am pretty much going to be going with tan and black as a combination, or green and tan, or green and black. So I am going to try to offer 3 different color combinations for those who want to mix it up. Additionally, you have a lanyard hole in the back. I am subtly changing the position of this. I do a lot of reverse grip stabbing to process wood, and in that case, I don't want a hot spot to develop. So the lanyard hole will be moved to the lower position in order to get a full wrap of G10 here contoured over the top of the pommel and to aid in comfort and overall longevity while you're using the knife at length. But as you can see, beautifully sculpted, the handle just melting into my hands. I have a large size hand and the knife fits just about perfect. And even if I had an extra large hand, because everything is rounded and contoured, there is more than enough handle here, plus the ability to get up into the alternate grips on that finger choil. And so now just briefly rolling in some comparisons to knives that you may already be familiar with. So here, the Ontario Rat 7, as you can see, similar in overall length, similar in general features. However, fundamentally, in my opinion, a lot of the deficiencies that I find with the Rat 7 have been worked out with the Inception. Contouring of the scales, saber versus flat, some of the little subtleties, and just a better overall package. In my opinion, the Rat 7, of course, is a very capable knife, but anytime you have the ability to improve on designs, I try to do so. So again, reverse engineering some of the things that I don't like about some of these other models and taking care of it in the Inception. Now here, the Hogue EX F01 7-inch version. This again, a very capable knife, and you will see it falls right in line with this general size class. A fantastic knife, again, has that high saber grind, but again, just a little bit thin on the profile on the scales. A beautiful knife, don't get me wrong, but again, in my opinion, some of the things that I found create hot spots. I'm trying to work that out in the Inception to give the user a more pleasant experience, not to mention overall functionality. And here again, the SE6, a 6-inch knife size class, really fitting in with the rest of these. Now the blade length a little bit shorter, but sort of similar in general profile. Again, if you get the SE6 or even the Rat 7 with the contoured scales, it really does, in my opinion, make a big difference. And of course, those are available. But again, just rolling in the Inception against these knives, fantastic company, fitting nicely in that mid-size survival weight class. Now, in terms of the sheath, Shade of Indonesia did provide a basic leather sheath for this design. I am changing this design. In my opinion, I do not like these straps. Yes, it adds retention, but at the same time, every time you take the knife in and out of the sheath, it requires you to slide this out of the way. It's a bit of a liability. It's easy to accidentally cut your straps if you're not careful, and I really prefer not to have that in the first place. So in the production run, I do anticipate having a sheath more like this. Now this is an SE sheath. I am using this for the example, but if you look at this particular knife, it fits in here nicely, and this is about the design I'm going for. I will probably bury the handle just a little bit more to aid in additional retention, but it should be more like a standard dangle style pouch sheath. And so again, if you like the design of the Inception, I am looking for some support. Again, these are all hand-forged, handmade, beautiful knives. I am trying to keep the price as absolutely reasonable as possible, and I think you'll find there is a massive, massive amount of value in this knife when you look at what you're getting, the overall craftsmanship, the design elements, and just the overall capabilities of this fantastic survival knife. You are going to get a ton out of the Inception. So if you like what you see here, do me a favor, reach out to me at outerlimitless@gmail.com, where I can provide you with all of the details. And so, all right, guys, there you have it, a detailed look at the shade of Indonesia Outer Limitless design Inception. I am extremely proud of this knife for many reasons. The performance, first and foremost, through the roof. And with the subtle design changes going into the production run, I know this is going to be a hit. It was already like a 9 out of 10. And pushing this to the next level, it will be absolutely perfect in my opinion. Gives me everything I'm looking for that mid-size survival knife. Fitting nicely with its counterparts, just filling in sort of the voids that I see in some other designs, taking the hot spots out, making the knife geometry just what it needs to be, the length, the size, and even the carry system, everything about this just working right. So if you're interested in this shade of Indonesia Outer Limitless design Inception, do me a favor, reach out to me at outerlimitless@gmail.com, and I will give you all the details. And so the next time you see this knife, it will be the production run. I'll bring it back to you. I'll show you the comparison, the design changes, and all the little subtleties that go into this. But with that said, thank you very much for following along. And if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.